it's clear from a lot of the things you've said and what we all observe here in the U.S. that, what you've experienced here as sort of growing in a program, learning to become astronauts and really leading in it is really the story of America. I mean, there are distinct stories. But I'm not going to ask you yet to comment on all of America. That's complicated. But just like in America, in the programs you've been in and driven, there's been ups and downs, maybe more downs than ups, and it's been very painful sometimes. Can you comment on what you think, I'm not going to say everything, but what you think, where we're going? I mean, is the program going to really be a program that we can be proud of in America? I'm worried about the future, but what do you think needs to get done to really make this program, the astronaut program, we can talk about America later, something which you both would be proud of? What would it take? I mean, what's the,
I think the big thing it'll take is stay the course. We're on a good trajectory in terms of representation in the astronaut office. It's not nearly enough people there. We could use more women. We could use especially more women of color. We can use more people of color. So we want it to look like the nation, and that's where we're headed. The positive signs are the woman who heads the Johnson Space Center today is my fellow South Carolinian, Vanessa Weish from Clemson University, who is just doing a bang-up job, and she's responsible for the dominant space flight center in the world in terms of human space flight. That would not have happened, 20 years ago when Leland was there in the program. So that gives you hope. So,
I think the biggest thing that we have to do as a civilization really is to let all kids know what is possible. That's why these movies are so critically important, for them to see the journey of Ed, and then to see Waddy in space talking to Ed and him saying, "Thanks for remembering me." And I think that legacy of all the sacrifices and all the struggles, even depicted through Ed's artwork, from an enslaved person to the first black astronaut in Texas, holding his helmet, looking at himself after he's flown in space, is critically important for kids to see. Back in Lynchburg, Virginia, I have some kids that when they walk into the Jubilee Family Development Center, which is beside the prison, they have a TV in there that has a downlink from the space station so that they can see Jeanette Epps, who's going to be going to space on Friday, see what is possible. And I think that's the other thing that's critically important. If you see it, you can be it. Yeah. But so many kids don't see it.
Yeah. Another question, maybe get a little more personal here. When you watch the movie, you can see that being a great astronaut, being a great leader in NASA requires both very, very strong self, especially being a black astronaut, very, very strong self-confidence, driven individuality. You're competing. I think you were talking about competing. But it also is very much a team sport. Right. And in the end, you folks have really joined with your peers in team sport. How do you balance that when you're coming up through the ranks? And how would you advise these young women in the front row that they take on becoming an astronaut if that's what they choose to do? Because it's such a contrast.
Kira has gotten this from me, I think, as long as she can remember, probably.
How do you balance that?
I tell her her job is to take care of her teammates. Mm-hmm. Take care of your people, and they'll take care of you. That sounds simple, but I learned that at my dinner table with my mom and dad growing up in the segregated South. I learned it when I got to the Naval Academy. They taught me that when I became a Marine, and that's the principle by which I've tried to live. And I think if you focus on your people and their welfare, and you kind of forget about yourself, everything takes care of itself. So I would say that's critically important.
But can I follow up? So, as you said in the movie, there were also a lot of personal insults, you're being dragged down all the time. And
that's life.
It's life. It is life. But it also means you've got to overcome that. Yeah. And this, everyone in this audience could appreciate your answer to this. But I mean, in your mind, how do you deal with those kinds of very personal attacks? I mean, we heard that throughout the movie. Really personal attacks.
So one of my heroes is the person that Ed Dwight didn't know about, who is Harriet Tubman. Yeah. If Harriet Tubman, as an enslaved woman who's been hidden ahead with an anvil and all these things have happened to her, can get to freedom, and then when she gets there, they say, well, you can't go back and get your family. She says, watch me do it. Right? Watch me. Right. And to have the resolve and the power and the strength as an enslaved person to do that. I can do anything. Yeah. We're capable of doing anything. If she can do that during that time, we can gut it up, man it up, woman up, do what we have to do to take it to the next level.
Being a football player helped that?
It definitely helps. You get beat down
being
quite a bit. You know about that, right?
Being a fighter pilot probably helped the same way, right? So let me go through some of these questions now. I mean, there's some really interesting questions here. This question of Ed Dwight, which is both sad and, in the end, you brought him, I think, happiness when you ended up calling him the pioneer. It looked like he was sort of thinking that through. Do I really want to be a pioneer? Am I a pioneer? But how could, I don't want to replay history, but it tells us about the future. How could we make it different for a black astronaut in space? I mean, how would you get more, equity in the program? I mean, what is it you need to get people, the messaging? What is it you need to actually do to get more black astronauts, basically, men and women, whatever? I mean, is there something that you can do or we can do to help drive that?
Leland's the educator.
Yeah, that's
the key.
We're all educators.
I know, but I'm just saying it's.
Oh, I mean, I was telling Charlie and Jackie this earlier. I hadn't flown yet. I was at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory. You guys have some stuff out in Pasadena somewhere.
JPL, yeah.
And I'm signing a picture for this kid. He's a 9th grader. And I say, you can do anything you put your mind to, whatever you believe. Fast forward 5 years ago, I'm at George Mason, and this kid walks up to me and says, hey, do you remember me? I'm like, no, who are you? He says, you signed a picture for me back in the day when I was in 9th grade. It said I can do anything. And I just graduated with a PhD in aerospace engineering because I said he could. So those are the things that, you're there, you're helping someone see the journey, just like what Ed helped Jessica and Victor and these other people see what's possible. Even though he didn't make it, he was still there. He was still contributing. He set the foundation.
Yeah. And both of you are out all the time, as you said, educating. You're out there talking to people, which is great. Let's go back up to a bigger question, which we have a lot of votes for, actually. A nation, which is our nation, excelling in things like innovation, education, infrastructure, which NASA represents one of the great outputs of that, can lead effectively. But what is it we can do better to lead effectively? I mean, we do have. I think it's good, actually. The international competition's gotten harder and harder and harder. You work with companies, companies outside the country that are doing it. What is it that we as a country need to do to ensure at least leadership, in discovery and new ideas? How do we get to space? How do we get to Mars? How do we get back to Moon? We've got a lot of things going on right now. And I'm just wondering when you look out, not even a lot of years, just a couple of years, how do you think the U.S. can continue to be in the leadership role?
The track on which we're presently headed, we won't.
Yeah.
And it's because we depend. I talked about ideas. It's important for all of us. All of us, if we call ourselves Americans, need to understand this thing about ideas. This nation was founded on an idea, and it is the idea. It's exemplified in the Declaration of Independence, in the Constitution, and everything, that all men are created equal. All this other kind of stuff. If we don't believe that, as we tend to exhibit to the outside world today, that we don't believe that, then we're not going to be the great nation and the leader that has brought us to this point where we are today. They believe that. I believe that. Leland believes that. But we need people who are people in positions of responsibility who really have to believe that. It is critically important. And no better time than what we're going through right now, with election season rolling up. People ask me all the time, there are 4 letters that I tell them, how do we become great? How do we maintain? We vote.
Yep.
Yeah.
So that's political. But that's what this country is all about. We vote.
I do want to comment, though, because I was watching the nomination process for you becoming administrator.
Lindsey Graham.
It was probably the last time.
Oh, I was laughing for a reason.
It's probably the last time that we had a Congress that actually agreed on something.
And it was the last civil, and I mean civil like being reasonable people. It was the last civil confirmation procedure in the Obama administration. That was in month 7 of the first term of the Obama administration. After that, every single confirmation became increasingly more caustic.
Yeah.
And we can't continue to do that. And you also cannot not talk about it. Everybody in this room needs to go and, when you get back home and you get around the dinner table, call your kids and invite them to come in. You may not agree at all politically, but plead with them to come in and say, we can sit around the table and we can talk about why we disagree. But unless we can talk about why we disagree, we're not going anywhere. And that's why I say take care of your people. And that was really important for me at NASA, was to ask people to try to understand what somebody else is thinking or what they're going through, and don't judge them. Don't judge them, or they'll never sit down with you. So get your kids back.
I want to follow up with a more personal question. So when you were nominated, which was pretty amazing, Barack Obama nominated you, it was
2009.
2009. Yeah. What went through your mind? That's one of the hardest jobs in the country. Why would you take that job? And what did you think about
my first 2 years? Well, they helped. My first 2 years, I wondered the same thing, because my wife, when I went to interview with him, or when I went to talk to him, I didn't know it was an interview. She said, "Don't go," and I said, "But I just want to meet him." She said, "Don't go, because he's going to ask you to do something." And like I said, you don't know how to say no. And he didn't ask me anything, so I didn't have to say no. But I did not realize what a privilege it would be, to work for not just the president, but for that president. And for me, it was really, really, really important.
Yeah.
And it was inspiring every day to go to work.
Yeah.
To be working with and for him.
Yeah. At a much smaller scale, I was director of Argonne National Labs when he was president.
Oh, yeah.
I quit as soon as he quit, but it was so amazing to work with someone who understood science, and
loved it,
and cared about
this
it.
This has nothing to do with the movie, but every year his favorite event and my favorite event was the White House Science Fair.
Yeah.
Oh,
because he picked kids from around the country who had won their science fairs and invited them to come, and there were hundreds. I see some people shaking their heads, so you may be teachers who took your kids. Hundreds of kids from all over the country who brought their science fair projects in. And over that week's period of time, the president made time to get up from his desk, no matter what was going on in the world, and go out and play with the experiments that the kids brought. And then he honored them at the end of the week by picking a few of them, and he talked about their project and why he really liked it. And then the others he had standing behind him on the stage. So that, again, is just setting expectations for those students and then watching them rise to the level of their expectations.
It's called leadership.
Yeah. Leadership.
It's called leadership.
Basically.
So tell us a little about how you ended up becoming an astronaut, doing your 2 missions. I mean, you went through an odd route. You didn't go the same route he went. Your route was different. So tell us a little about what was going through your mind when you said, "Oh, I want to do that."
Well, I never said I wanted to do that. It was another person. I was working at NASA Langley, doing fiber optic sensor research, and this friend of mine said, "Hey, you'd be a great astronaut." He hands me an application. It's like we had applications you had to fill out. And I looked at it and just threw it down. I said, I don't want to be an astronaut. When I was 5 years old, Neil and Buzz walked to the moon. I was holding the rabbit ears on the black and white Sylvania television set. And I never saw the transmission, so I never thought of even doing it. And then
You missed it.
I didn't apply for the 1996 class, but one of my friends, Charlie Camarda, he got in.
You're not supposed to tell his name.
Oh, yeah, this guy got in. And I said, if that knucklehead can get in, I can get in. So I applied the next selection, I got in.
Yeah.
And it's because he then came back and showed us what he was doing as an astronaut. Inspiring kids, flying jets and doing this stuff. And so I applied and I got in.
Cool.
It wasn't that guy. Yeah, it wasn't that guy.
So let's talk a little bit about what it's like to be in space, because that's something I think nobody here has the experience, but I think the two of you, unless anyone else been to space in the audience? No, okay.
We're all in space.
We actually are all drifting through the universe and very quickly, but you did it a little differently. So Leland, tell us a little about, first of all, what the experience was like, and can you tell us something we wouldn't normally think of? Like this group has seen your images of floating and in free fall and all that. Tell us something that we might not know about when you're in space.
So when I got to space, my job was to install this $2 billion laboratory that all the European Space Agency engineers were waiting to get installed so they would have job security. Installed it. I thought that would be my aha moment, but Peggy Whitson, the first female commander, invited us over to the Russian segment to have a meal. She said, you guys bring the rehydrated vegetables, we'll have the meat. So we float over, we have this meal, African-American, Asian-American, French, German, Russian, the first female commander, breaking bread at 17,500 miles per hour, going around the planet every 90 minutes while listening to Sade Smooth Operator. Boom! Mind is blown.
Could be worse.
And Eric, we're flying over my hometown in Virginia.
Oh, wow.
We're flying, 7 minutes later, we're flying over Paris.
Wow.
Yuri's looking off to Moscow. We're all having stories, telling stories about our families and what we're eating in space and what they're probably eating. Meatloaf and mashed potatoes, wine and cheese in Paris, and then borscht in Russia.
Of course.
But those moments were the most priceless moments.
Great.
Because we were connecting as a family.
And you felt there was this camaraderie between
was.
black,
We
women,
felt- it was-
everybody.
We
Nobody felt
we
it.
depended on each other or we died.
Yeah.
If I flip the wrong switch, if Yuri flips the wrong switch, we're all dead. So
How do you bottle that and bring it back to Earth?
you get this thing called the overview effect, where you've seen all of humanity from the standpoint of everyone who was, is, and will be, and you've had this experience with the people we used to fight against, and you come home and you want to help people change their perspective on working together as one human family.
And you're going around doing that. So really
Every
appreciate
day.
this movie.
Every day.
Charlie, I mean, you were a pilot. Tell us what it was like to pilot. The
Ron said it. There is no word. Shuttles. I'm a shuttle person only, so never went to. We didn't even have the International Space Station before I left the office. But the shuttle was the world's largest glider, and so it was just a thrill to have an opportunity to fly this incredibly maneuverable glider. You would think it looks like a big 737 or something like that, but it flew incredibly well. You knew you had one chance because it had no go around or anything, but you trained over and over and over and over again. I think I had 2,500 simulated landings before I flew my first flight. Wow. And you're constantly training, so that you get it right the first time. And it was just a remarkable vehicle to have an opportunity to fly.
Did your experience as a fighter pilot?
I'm not a fighter pilot. Everybody gets that wrong.
Not a fighter pilot.
I was an attack
pilot. Okay.
First of all, I'm a Marine. And so in the Marine Corps, we have fighter aircraft, we have rotary wing aircraft, we have attack. The attack aircraft has usually we didn't have any protective armament. So our job was to hit targets on the ground, and so that other people wouldn't get shot at and all that kind of stuff. So
yeah, that's a
I
good
was an
job.
attack pilot.
But so did that help you in your flying of the shuttle?
Immensely. It one, and we were talking about this a little bit earlier. Just having been in an airplane is helpful. Having had we fly a T-38 for training because it gives us an opportunity to take people like Leland who are not aviators to get them upside down and have them get an opportunity to feel what it's like, to have your blood go into your head, because that's when you get free of Earth's gravity, when centrifugal force takes over, the blood in your body seeks equilibrium. So the first couple of days, you'll notice, if nobody looks at astronauts anymore, but when they used to, blood vessels are distended here, and that's because you've got all this excess fluid in the upper part of your body. So you go pee. And you take a couple of days and you urinate out about 2 liters of fluid that the body doesn't need while you're in space. So flying gives you an opportunity to do all that stuff. For them, they go in a giant tank and do simulated spacewalks and the like. And I think that's what helps the spacewalkers be good at it.
Cool. So I wanted to sort of combine two things now. I really am fascinated by Afrofuturism. I think it's so cool. I'm a huge science fiction fan, but to be honest, I've read Asimov and Heinlein and the usual white male authors, like Ursula Le Guin and all that. But it's really fascinating to see, I'm a huge fan of Sun Ra. I used to go here live in New York City, and I just love these guys. But What role do you think that this can have in bringing like all of us along with imagining what a future could be, a very much more exciting and positive future for, for Black people as well as white people, as well as all different people of color? Because I think it's a fascinating thing that I just don't know enough about to be able to say anything.
I was in seventh grade when I went to hear Parliament Funkadelic at the Roanoke Civic Center.
There you go.
And my dad was a chaperone, my girlfriend was. Anyway, I saw this big mothership coming up off the stage.
George Clinton.
Yeah, and these outfits, and it was all about space. But I couldn't make that connection. So now with the movie, we're making the connection to this Afrofuturism state that's always been there. That people didn't make the connection to space. Looking up at the night sky, thinking about these ships, thinking about Earth, Wind, and Fire, sing a song. All these songs had a space theme and element embedded in it that we don't connect sometimes to astronauts.
So all this is going on. I mean, Afrofuturism has been going on for a long time, unbeknownst to me.
Unbeknownst to all of us.
And Earth,
to
Wind,
many
and
of
Fire,
us. And
George Clinton and these
any
guys.
Poets in here? People who write poetry? My favorite poet is Nikki Giovanni, and I'm not sure anybody's ever heard who Nikki Giovanni is.
There you go.
But I think she's getting ready to retire. She's a professor down at Virginia Tech. And she's the person after the shooting at Virginia Tech that coined the phrase, "We are Virginia Tech." Anyway, I did not know. She was a civil rights person, big activist. Long time ago, she wrote a poem that was in a book called Searching for the Black Eyed Pea or something like that. And it's called We Are Going to Mars. And she loves space and really wants to go to space and wants to go to Mars. But her We Are Going to Mars poem tells the story of why Blacks are the people who should lead us to a place like Mars, because no other race of people has gone through the experience of the Middle Passage, in the bowels of a slave ship for weeks or months at a time, not knowing where you're going, not knowing whether you're going to survive or anything, and they did it. And she says, that's like going to Mars. When we do that, we are not going to have a clue. It's going to be very difficult. And so,
Well, we have our first two volunteers to go to Mars right here.
I'm all in.
So how much time do we have? We have a little bit of time. I want to get to the education piece and the future and how we make sure that you have successors, right, in every way. Maybe these young women here in the front. But, you've been working a lot on education at the national level. So what is it in particular related to the space program, but more broadly, I mean, what is it that you're trying to convey? What are the strategies that you think will work? Because I think we're still far away from really having a robust system where everyone gets the information, the ideas, and the imagination that we'd like them to have.
I mean, I think the critical thing is to make sure that students, even at a very early age, get hands-on experiential activities, and they can translate what they see looking up at the night sky to building solar systems or building bicycles or building things with their hands to understand how to make tools that can create an international space station. And I think sometimes we're so doggedly driven into teaching to a test that we forget to do the things that we do as scientists and engineers and just explorers. Hey, I want to go from A to B. How do I do it over a lake? I need to build a boat. How do I do that? What is buoyancy? What are all these things that I'm going to be learning about to successfully navigate that stream? Mm-hmm. And it's just exploration. And it's embedded in children as it is, but we beat it out of them sometimes, because we don't let them do the things that they're like. The kids pull pots out and start beating on them. That's an acoustics experiment, right? But we shut that down.
Or pull the toaster apart, or
I pull the phone apart,
right.
and I put it back together on a piece of wood, and it works, But we have to really, the experiential pieces are critical to what we do.
I mean, I know from my own point of view, in third grade, I had a teacher, a woman who immigrated from India, actually, who'd spent a month on astronomy. And I was smitten, and I'm now a physicist.
In third grade?
In third grade. And I can draw a direct line, but I still remember her all the time. I never forget her. Those kinds of experiences. So a lot of it is teaching the teachers to be exciting, to allow kids to create, to allow kids to say things which are stupid, which are not stupid, which are really crazy.
And the other the critical thing is we all have trauma in our lives, to make sure that the trauma is addressed before you're trying to throw things into someone's head. Because when I was doing the Educator Astronaut program, we had educators who were becoming astronauts. And I asked every educator, what was your worst time as an educator, your worst and your best time as an educator? And this one teacher said, I had this one student who was an A student, over the course of 6 months, started missing school on Wednesdays, started getting D's, and on Wednesdays was the day that she was out on the street as a prostitute, as a middle school kid, because that's sort of, so how do you want to study if you have this trauma in your life? And so addressing the trauma, I think, is critically important for all kids. So anyway.
So we're coming to the end, but I want to give each of you one last chance to say one other thing that's on your mind. If you want to tell the audience one other thing, what would it be? Okay, should I be more specific?
No.
That's fine.
I just thought I'd give you the last word here, both of you.
Go ahead.
That's hard. That's because I try to say things up front so that I make sure they get out. So
You're done.
I don't have anything profound to say, except I was looking to see if there were any little kids, because I'd give them my study hard, work hard, never be afraid of failure thing. But I'll tell the students over here, so you don't forget it, study really hard, work really hard, and and never be afraid of failure. That's good. Failure is a necessary part of growing up and life. But I think I will leave everyone with my belief. I'm the eternal optimist. I always have been. I am incredibly naive, and I'm very proud of it. So I would say, try being like me sometimes. Just let people laugh at you because you're naive, and but stay optimistic. Yeah, we are, and the world will be what we make it. Yep. So
yeah, be like Charlie. That's a low bar. That's a low bar.
I think the biggest thing, I think we as people, we come to the table to a position or a job or a team, is that we try to sometimes conform to what the team expectation of us is. And instead of doing that, make sure you take care of yourself first before you even come into the team. But bring your authentic self. Whatever you have culturally or aesthetically or however you want to display yourself in this team, make sure it's coming from a place of authenticity. Because if you're not bringing your full self to the team, then we don't get all those riches to help solve those problems and get the best solution when you have the most diverse teams and ideas and thoughts and authenticity.
That's a great way to finish. Let's thank our two wonderful.
Thank you, Eric.
Leo and Charlie. Thank you both, Eric. Thank you all for coming. Thanks for the great questions. Thank you.